All right, Books of Mercy, whatever the hell I'm calling this. Johnathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It's quite good. It's quite solid. I'm not really going to get into spoilers. It's not really necessary to discuss this. Johnathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. So yeah, to start out with, it's quite solid. Basic synopsis is takes place in England during the Napoleonic Wars. The Battle of Waterloo actually features quite prominently in part of it. At any rate, at the outset, magic has vanished. It hasn't vanished from England. Magic is still present in England, but no one's doing it. So for all intents and purposes, there is no magic. Magic has become, no one does practical magic. No one does things that you would recognize as real magic. People don't, the magicians, the individuals who call themselves magicians, they don't pull rabbits out of hats. They don't make broomsticks fly across the room. They don't do spells. They don't do magic. They don't do what is called practical magic. Magic has become a gentlemanly profession. It's become a profession for gentlemen, and gentlemen don't work. And doing actual magic, doing practical magic would mean doing actual work. So they're not going to do that. Obviously, status quo can't last, and it doesn't. A practical magician, someone who can actually do magic, appears, Mr. Norrell, and he proceeds to perform magic. Yeah, and it's one of the most, I think it's one of the strongest parts of the book, the initial magic that Mr. Norrell performs. Mr. Norrell, as a result of what Mr. Norrell has done, magic, not surprisingly, a sort of huge interest, a sort of tremendous interest in magic arises. And ultimately, Norrell takes on a student, in this case, Johnathan Strange. And the two men are both practical magicians. They both engage in magic. And very stark contrast. Mr. Norrell is bookish to the point of obsession. He's obsessed with having every book of magic, can't stand anyone having other books. Right? Only he should have the books. His library is voluminous, to say the least. It's massive. And Mr. Norrell wants to put magic on a sound footing. He wants to make it a science. He wants to remove mystic and mysterious and really non-English elements from magic. Magic should really be like a science. It should be solid. It should be mathematics. By the way, just as an aside, this does, I do kind of wonder if the author, if Susanna Clarke, had in mind analytic philosophy, which you see appearing. I mean, it appears in Anglo-Saxon philosophy and analytic philosophy. Not to get into it, but we're going to remove mysticism. We're going to remove metaphysics. We're going to make philosophy a rigorous science, right? It's going to be a rigorous endeavor. We're going to get rid of any of this mystical nonsense and so forth. Back to the novel. Not surprisingly, Johnathan Strange, we have to foil. The two have to play off each other. Johnathan Strange is the exact opposite of Mr. Norrell. He's impulsive, he's impetuous, he's brilliant, but the brilliance comes in flashes. He's much more of an artist, I think, in terms of the magic. There's inspiration, and there's sudden thing, there's Johnathan Strange, yes, wants the mystical, wants the mystery, wants all of the ancient fairy magic, wants to know and understand all of that, whereas Norrell wants to purge it. And so the novel largely concerns itself with these two. So I think that's a pretty good, that's laying out the basics pretty well. So in terms of the novel, it's well written. I think it's very well written. You'll get a lot. The writing is very solid. I think the writing's quite good. The writing is quite enjoyable to read. Clarke writes very well. The main observation I have about the novel, and this is kind of interesting because I think it's kind of a problem. It's a problem I think I see with other novels, but it's particularly apparent here. The novel is in a lot of ways quite episodic. And it's actually, I think, more enjoyable if you read it that way. To cut to the chase, I really think this would have been better if it had been the adventures of Johnathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And by that I mean, if it had been a collection of short stories, if it had been a collection of the various adventures that they have separate, that they have together, right, their various interactions with others, both magical and non-magical. I mean, for example, Johnathan Strange becomes an aide, becomes an assistant, effectively becomes Merlin in France, as the British are fighting the French, and is present at the Battle of Waterloo. And so, yeah, the novel is quite, so as I say, it's quite episodic, and really I think better if you read it that way. I mean, I think if you read it in treating these almost as separate episodes, it'll be a lot more enjoyable. And I think that it really works that way. The problem, I think, is that, and I don't blame the author for this, or the publisher, or the editors, or anyone. I think it's probably just a reality of contemporary literature, contemporary novels. There's got to be a plot, right? There's got to be some kind of plot. And there is a plot. It doesn't really work. Honestly, it kind of gets in the way. Clarke has an excellent imagination. She's very inventive. I think she does very well with summoning up some very interesting images, situations, scenarios, ideas. Really a wonderful, really, I think, an impressive imagination. And when the story tries to become a novel, when it tries to become a novel-length story, it just doesn't work, or it just doesn't work that well. The imagery is still impressive, but there are things that have to come in to serve the plot, and they really don't work. The book kind of stalls at those moments. And I don't think it's the fault of Clarke. I don't think it's the fault of the editors. If anything, I think it's the fault of an audience that has to have a plot. This would be a lot better as the adventures of, I don't know about a lot better, but it would be, the book really, the story really wants to be the adventures of Johnathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, like Sherlock Holmes, like it's a familiar situation, a partnership, and that is also a rivalry. Thor and Loki, Farid and the Grey Mouser, Abbott and Costello. You can think of various pairings. Once you start going through them, you can think of lots of them, Frog and Toad, and it works pretty well. But I think it works better. It would work better as a series of short stories, and the short story has just fallen into. It's just not done. It's just not. Right now, it's not really a viable form. People just aren't really. More's the pity, but people aren't really into it. So I think overall, Johnathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, it's quite solid. It's quite well written. It's very inventive. There's a lot of references to actual events and people from the time period. That's quite interesting. I think Clarke does really quite a good job. Again, I think the only real difficulty I would point to is that yes, it wants to be the adventures of Johnathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And it's not. Again, I don't think that's the author's fault, the editor's fault, the publisher's fault. That's just the situation we're in at the moment, at least in terms of the short story, and I think probably for the foreseeable future. All right, so that's it. If you check it out, let me know what you think. Agree, disagree. I'd be quite interested to hear what others think. So, yeah, thanks a lot. Check you later.